Could you also do a clap?
This is TVW CONNECTS. Let's dive right into the questions.
Hi, my name is Noah.
A student-driven Q&A where Washington's youth connect with elected officials, state leaders, and political experts. Welcome to CONNECTS. Today we're joined by Governor Inslee. Governor Inslee has been involved in Washington state government for over 30 years. He has served the people of Washington as governor since his election in 2012 and is the longest-standing governor in the country. Welcome to the show, Governor Inslee. Before we have you introduce yourself, Governor, we want to recognize all the students who have participated by submitting questions. While we only have time for 13 of the questions today, the level of civic engagement these students demonstrated was remarkable. Students, as we call out your school name, can you please wave to the governor? Lake Washington High School in Kirkland. All right. Open Window School in Bellevue. Cascade High School in Everett. We have North Kitsap High School in Poulsbo joining us too. The Downtown School in Seattle. And last but not least, College Place High School in Walla Walla. Hi, guys. So now that you've had a chance to see all who's joined, do you have anything you'd like to say before we let the students take it away, Governor?
Well, just a big hello and thanks for this active student group asking all these questions. It's really impressive. By way of introduction, I'm Jay Inslee. I'm a graduate of Ingram High School class of 1969. And I know that sounds like it's in a different century, which it was from these students. So I'm really interested in the dialogue to see what they're thinking about. But, you know, it's so encouraging that we have a group of students who care enough about their state to get involved, to talk to their governor. It's really inspiring to me. And I want to thank them for inspiring us. I was last inspired at the Bainbridge High School homecoming football game last Friday night, where I got to give the pep talk in the locker room. And I was so inspired because that football team went out there and actually had a victory. So I'll look forward to being inspired again today. Looking forward to this discussion.
All right, well, thanks so much for that, Governor. The students have taken some time to research issues affecting the state and your work as governor, and they have some insightful questions for you. So with that, let's get to it. Our first question is from Hannah.
Good afternoon, Governor Inslee. I'm a junior at College Place High School in southeastern Washington. Currently, I'm the school's ASB president, and I'm realizing that when it comes to leading, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. You came from humble beginnings, first as a lawyer in Eastern Washington, and now as the governor. My question for you is, what is one piece of wisdom you would give to someone young in leadership experience that you have gleaned over the past few decades?
Well, that's a really astute question from the College Place Hawks, and thanks for your leadership position. I'll give you two pieces of advice if I can. Number one, always listen to young people because they have the brightest, newest, and freshest ideas. But the second piece of advice I would give you is, I think in public service, I think when I was young, if you were going to ask me at age 18, 19, 20, what's the most important skill set of a leader, I might have said, you know, be a good debater, be a good speaker, be a good orator. But I don't think those are the most important skill sets. The most important skill set is listening, to really being able to understand the true motivations and the true desires of the people that you're working with. And so what I would say is, if you are thinking about going into public service, sharpen your listening skills. That'll bear very well in so many different ways. And I know you'll be good. So I don't know if you've listened to my advice, but if you were, I know you'll be a great president of the United States.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Governor. Now, the students had a couple of education-related questions for you as well. And the first one is from James.
Hi, Governor Inslee. I'm James Larson from Cascade High School in Everett. I know you've done a ton to help the K-12 education program, and I've certainly seen the fruits of that as I've gone through my schooling. As a student who's applying to college, though, lots of things have been changing in recent years. And in lieu of affirmative action being declared unconstitutional, what have you done and what are you doing to ensure equitable access to higher education for all?
Well, I really appreciate your question. The Bruins always have good questions at your high school. And that is a very important one. because access to higher education is such a key to open up so many opportunities, and there's been wildly divergent opportunities in our society. This is one of the most important things we can do to really increase equity in our society. So we've done several things. Number one, I vacated a previous order by a previous governor that would have banned all affirmative action measures. And under that definition, it would have prohibited us from doing some things that are constitutionally allowed. So I vacated that previous restrictive order. Second, we're trying to really focus getting students who are first generation potential college students to have an experience on a college campus, to really get a feeling for them so they can see themselves on a college campus. And I've seen those programs work. I was in one in Tacoma, I believe at Lincoln High School just about a year or so ago, to get students whose parents, uncles may not have gone to college, they never really thought about it, to get them to have an experience on a college campus so they can see themselves and a vision for their own selves really moving forward. Third, we're trying to recruit more teachers from communities of color. This is very important for people to be able to see themselves in the educational context with teachers of their own ethnicity. And we're making some strides on that by getting additional scholarships to be available to get people through higher ed. We're also doing something is interesting. I just finished a meeting with some folks on having a residency program so we can get people who can go into teaching who without actually getting an educational degree. And we have found this is important to bring more communities of color into the teaching profession. So I'm hopeful that we succeed on this because it's very important to equity in our society. And I'll look forward to. You want to be a teacher someday?
My mom's a teacher, and I've certainly looked into it.
Oh, well, thank her for her work. My dad was a teacher, and my brother and sister-in-law are teachers. It's a great profession. I hope you'll listen to her. She'll give you good advice.
She definitely does. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Our next question on education equity is from Charlotte.
Good afternoon, Governor Inslee. My name is Charlotte Moskowitz, and I'm a senior at Lake Washington High School in Kirkland. During your governance, Washington State education on the K-12 levels became fully funded for the first time in over a decade, satisfying orders in the McCleary case and ensuring that all K-12 schools in Washington are adequately funded. However, local and state tax dollars are still needed to meet requirements for additional resources such as para-educators within schools. How will you ensure that all students have equal access to the facilities and aid that they need in schools?
Well, I appreciate that question. I got started in education in Selah, Washington. Trudy and I led a school bond to build a new high school in Selah, Washington. And we finally passed the school bond on the 6th try. And then the legislature promptly cut the funding formula in half. So I got mad about it and ran for the legislature. This is what got me inspired into politics in the first place. I think the first thing we're going to do is make sure we continue the commitments we have made that have made significant increases in financing for the school systems. Well, the first order of business is to continue to provide that level of support. Second, I have been supportive of eliminating the requirement of a supermajority vote to actually pass local school bond issues so you can build new schools. I don't think it makes any sense. Right now, in order to pass it, you have to have 60% supermajority. That's a huge number when it comes to majorities. And the consequences of that means that a person who wants to vote for the levy gets one vote. The person who wants to vote against building a new school gets 1.5 votes. That's nuts. There's no reason one voter's vote should count more than any other voter's vote. So eliminating that supermajority requirement, I think, will go a long ways to allow us to get adequate financial support for our school district. I'm hope that we can pass that at some point. It's long, long overdue, and I know there's districts that really need it.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Congratulations on your mascot, the Kangaroos. They're you're tied for first place in my favorite mascot with the Dayton Gorillas. So congratulations.
So now moving on from education to the opioid crisis in Washington State. Our next question is from Aiden.
Hey there. My name is Aiden Dukas, and I'm a senior at Kingston High School, and I wanted to ask you guys if there's anything we could do about our rising opioid crisis in Washington State. 68% of them are from opioid overdoses, and as of 2007 to 2021, there was 17,502 deaths. And I just wanted to know if there's anything we could do to combat that.
I think there are, and this is very heartfelt. It's affecting all of our communities, urban, rural, rich and poor. These deaths are just such tragedies, frequently young people. I think there's a number of things we need to do. On the prevention front, we need to ramp up our educational opportunities for young people to understand particularly the dangers of fentanyl. And, you know, we've been in the drug education business for many, many decades, ever since it sort of started in the 60s. But I think this is a whole new order of danger associated with opioids, of fentanyl, which is, you know, 40, 50 times as lethal as other drugs. And what we're finding is many people lose their lives when they didn't even know they were taking fentanyl. They're taking something they thought it was, you know, Oxycontin, or they thought it was this, that, and the other, but it turns out to be fentanyl and they die. And I think one of the things we need to do is strengthen our educational opportunities for young people in our schools to understand the lethality of fentanyl. This is swallowing whole generations. And we, this year, I hope the legislature will join me in effectuating, giving more information to high school students about that. You know, frankly, we just have to make sure young people understand that you can't put anything in your mouth that doesn't come from a pharmacy, because you don't know what's in it. And there's something in it that's killing so many people that they don't even know what's in the product. Now, that doesn't eliminate the problem, because a lot of people want to take fentanyl. They take it intentionally, so it doesn't eliminate the problem. Second, we need to make Narcan, which is a life-saving product. A spritz up the nose can save your life. We need to make that much more available throughout our society, in places where there's concerts, in office buildings, you name it. We're carrying it now in our police cars and fire department, but it needs to be much more accessible to people to make it available. And that can be helped by strangers can help you. I was just talking to somebody the other day that saved a life, that came, in fact, a police officer I work with, who came upon someone passed out at the wheel, and he immediately diagnosed it, or looked at it appear to be a fentanyl issue, and gave him the shot in the nose, and he instantly revived. So it's an amazingly effective product, and we need to go further. Third, we need to do what we can to interdict the supply of these products. We passed a bill last year to outlaw pill presses, which allows these to be manufactured by the thousands at very low cost. There's some things that we need the American government and the Mexican government and the Chinese government to help us on, because there are some precursor chemicals that are coming into Mexico and then ending up being manufactured in fentanyl. That's something the state of Washington can't effectuate. We need some international help in that regard. So to help law enforcement provide a measure of reducing supply, if not eliminating it, are some things we need to do as well. So there's 3 or 4 things, and I hope the legislature will help us this year.
Now we move on to the topic of refugees. Vienna, go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon, Governor Inslee. My name is Vienna Pham, and I'm a senior at Lake Washington High School. And through the research I've conducted, I've seen that you've promoted diversity in Washington by welcoming refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine into the state of Washington. It's remarkable to see how you've welcomed nearly 15,000 refugees from 70 various countries. But with the ongoing war between Israel and Palestine going on, there is going to be a need to house more refugees into the state of Washington. My question for you is, how will our state receive more funding to continuously house more refugees in our state?
Yes, well, I'll answer that question, but I think that, let me just say to start with, I think Washington should be very proud that we have been as welcoming to refugees as we have. It's a mark of pride. We have the highest rate, for instance, of Ukrainian refugees in the United States. We're close on Afghanistan refugees. I think this should be a source of pride for our state. And by the way, it's not just a matter of compassion, which we have. It's not a matter just of empathy, which we have. It's a matter of building our state, because we found in so many circumstances, refugees come here with $1 in their pocket and they end up making our state stronger. I always tell a story about Trudy and I get some physical therapy on occasion for our joints. And the fellow who does it came here from Vietnam, out of a Vietnam refugee camp. Republican Dan Evans back in the 70s welcomed our state, the Vietnamese refugees. And those folks have now gone on to become doctors and engineers and physical therapists. It makes our state stronger to get these ambitious people to come. So we will need some additional resources with the increasing flow of refugees from around the world. And I'll be talking to the legislature about that. What we have found is that when we can do some fairly small things for refugee families, it really helps them get back on their feet and create whole new opportunities. I was talking to the Ukrainian refugee community in Spokane last week and met a young man who just got a little help and he opened up a barbershop. Now he's got his own business. I talked to a fellow who's from Ukraine, now has 3 businesses. One is a grocery store in Fife. And when we do small things to help people over the threshold, they can end up starting whole businesses and whole new lives. So those small things, I think, can make a difference. And I hope we will continue this effort. The world is a dangerous place. And in fact, we're going to have a lot more refugees because of climate change in the future. We face a future where so many people are not going to have food to eat or even water to drink because the climate is changing so radically. And we have to realize that's a reality. And during your lifetime, the world's going to be on the move because places in our planet are becoming uninhabitable. So your generation is going to need to grapple with this much more than mine, frankly, given what we're experiencing. The most recent report came out last week that suggested that large parts of the northern parts of Africa literally won't be habitable during your lifetime. So this is going to be an important issue for you, and I'm glad you're thinking about it.
Now let's talk about housing and homelessness. Rahul, take it away.
Hi, Governor Inslee. My name is Rahul Mitra, and I'm an 8th grader at Open Window School in Bellevue. I know that the housing prices have been increasing and the homelessness rate has been increasing. So how did you approach the housing issue equitably? What would be your advice for key investments going forward? And what funding obstacles do you foresee for key investments on this issue?
Well, we have addressed this first off of believing that we just should not accept rampant homelessness in our society. We're better than this. Washington State's better than this. And we ought to commit ourselves to getting people housed in our state. That's number one, to make a commitment to ourselves. I do think that's broadly shared in the state of Washington. So I think the will is there to actually tackle this problem. What I would say is we have to do the 3 things that are necessary. Number one, a lot of people have mental health challenges, so we have to provide additional mental health resources for them. When people have untreated schizophrenia, it's very difficult to go about your day and have a place to live. So we need to increase our mental health services available to people. Second, we've got to increase our ability to give people chemical treatment for their chemical problems. Many people who are homeless have chemical addictive problems. They need additional resources to get them into rehabilitation. And we have found that can be successful. It's not easy. A lot of people have to go through this 2 or 3, 4 times before it works, but it can work. But there is something that is overriding all of these issues, and that is we simply do not have enough houses in our state. We've had about 1 million people move into our state in the last 10 or 12 years, but we've only built about 330,000 housing units. So the simple fact is, we just don't have enough roofs in our state. We need to build roofs and sidewalls to hold them up. And we need to do that in 100 different ways, from single, family apartments to tiny home villages, to at times temporary shelters, to all kinds of new housing systems for different communities. We have to do this throughout the spectrum. Here's a reason I say that, Raul. A lot of people, I think, focus just on the issue that some people are homeless, have personal challenges, drugs, mental health. And they don't realize that, look, we can solve the mental health problem. We can solve the chemical addiction problem. But if you don't have a house for people to live in, they're still homeless. And I've focused on that. And there's a very interesting book. It's called Homelessness is a Housing Crisis. It's by a professor at the University of Washington. And he basically reached the conclusion that's the most important thing you can do is to build housing. He did this by comparing Seattle, Washington to Chicago. And what he found is Chicago has 3 times the vacancy rate, so they have a lot less homelessness in their apartments. So we got to build more housing, and we're doing that. Last year, I asked the legislature for $4 billion to do that. They came up with about $1 billion, just under $1 billion. Not all of that is for construction. Much of that is for mental health and the like. But we need to continue the upward commitment by the public to build more housing for folks. And we can't wait for 10 years to do it. You know, it takes a long time to build an apartment building. We can't wait to just build apartment buildings. We got to get people sheltered now. That's why I've been an advocate for tiny home villages, which you can do in months. You know what I'm talking about? These are little buildings. They might be, you know, 10 by 10. And you might have 50 of them in a parking lot. And you share cooking facilities and hygiene facilities. These work. And we can get them in months rather than years. And I believe we need to expand our opportunity for people in this regard. And by the way, we have focused on youth homelessness because you know how many youth are homeless. I was in Linwood last week before last, where they have a very innovative way of having housing for homeless youth. They're going to build a facility that just takes care of homeless youth and their families. They go to the Linwood High School. It's a really intriguing model where the school district is coming in there to actually help provide housing. So we've got to do a lot of work. It starts with building housing, and I appreciate you care about this.
All right, Finley has our next question.
My name is Finley Chapman, and I am a senior here at Kingston High School. Governor Jay Inslee, in addition to your $4 billion proposal for housing, how do you plan to address underlying causes of homelessness, such as gentrification, unemployment, substance abuse, and overpriced housing?
Right. Well, let me start with the overpriced housing, which is a huge problem, right? Because housing costs have gone up so dramatically. The way to reduce the cost of housing is to build more housing. Because the less housing you have, the more the rents go up and the more the prices go up. It's supply and demand. I don't know how much you've studied supply and demand actually in your high schools. I really did not study that until I studied economics at the University of Washington. But basically anything that you have less of goes up in price, right? Because you have people bidding on a limited supply of housing. So the price goes up. So we've got to build more housing so that we can restrain the price increases in rent and purchase price of new housing. That's absolutely fundamental to restraining this. Now, there's some things we can do in the short term to help renters with some bills that would, you know, limit evictions to a certain period of time and give renters rights, you know, on notice on rent increases and evictions and the like. But fundamentally, we got to build more housing. On the other issues we talked about, as I talked about, we need new additional mental health facilities. We need new community facilities where people can get inpatient care for their mental health concerns. And we need outpatient care as well to have more clinics that people can go to get outpatient care. To do that, we've had 2 limiting factors. One is financial, to be able to finance this, and all I can spend is the amount the legislature appropriates, and we're going to need to increase those investments. But we also have a personnel shortage. We have not had enough people get their degrees in psychology and psychiatry so they can actually provide these services. So I will tell you, if you're thinking about your future providing mental health services is is one where we really need more people, because we have to have people actually provide these services once we set up the facilities. The same thing goes for helping people with drug and alcohol problems. We simply need more facilities. We need more counselors. We are building those fairly rapidly. I was at one 2 weeks ago in Everett. Beautiful, beautiful facility that's going to help families, where families actually can live with their family member who's going through inpatient treatment. It's a really far-sighted model. So we just have not had enough. We haven't had it as many places, and we need to increase our commitment to get that job done. Now, everybody in this call is a leader too, right? So, you know, you don't have to be governor to be a leader. Everybody on this call is a leader. You have mechanisms to help your friends and your neighbors and your family members to deal with some of these problems too. And I encourage you to exercise your influence with your friends and others when it comes to drug usage and alcohol abuse and the need to get mental health treatment. I hope you can be a good friend. If you have friends that are having some difficulties emotionally with mental health and like, I encourage you to encourage them to talk to somebody about that problem and not be afraid to get help from your counselor or mental health or doctor. You can be leaders too, and I'll look forward to you to doing that.
We can be leaders too, indeed, and we can definitely influence change. Our next question is about leadership. Lydia has a question about how to achieve bipartisan support.
Hi, Governor Inslee. My name is Lydia, and I'm the ASB Vice President at College Place High School. So throughout your time as governor, you have managed to pass numerous bipartisan bills, despite the division between the political parties and that our two sides of the state don't really see eye to eye. Given your experience in passing these bills, such as the protection of abortion medication, how did your leadership play a part in the process of passing these bills? And then what advice would you give to those in charge?
Thanks, Lydia. I appreciate it. Well, I would say a couple things. One, this comes back to the listening idea we talked about originally. You know, listening to people, what their real motivations are and real needs are is important, particularly when you're doing bipartisan work. Second, I would say one of the first lessons, if you become a senator or a representative, you'll learn as a legislator, is that frequently you'll butt heads with somebody and you'll be on diametrically opposed positions, and you might have very passionately held beliefs on one side or the other, and you get in some big arguments on the floor of the House. But you need to treat people with respect and dignity, because the next day you might be working with them on a bill, right, on a different issue. And that should leaven your passion with respect for other people, because you're going to need to work with them the next day on other issues. And the more you do that, the more successful legislator that you'll be. The other secret of bipartisanship is to look for ways to solve two problems instead of just one. So if I've got a problem that I think needs resolution, joining it with solving a problem that another legislator of a different party might have, and try to solve both of our problems with the same legislature can make bipartisanship much more successful. I have to tell you, this is a great challenge for everyone in public life right now for a couple reasons. One, structurally, we have particularly in the US Congress, we have a problem in how it's structured right now, because it has created, in the US House of Representatives, you may have heard they're having difficulty picking a Speaker of the House right now. You may have heard about this. But the US House is infected with increasing difficulty finding bipartisanship, because there are more and more districts that represent only one sort of large majority of either blue or red sides. And there are much fewer what you might call purple districts, which has made finding bipartisanship much, much more difficult. And this is a structural failure of Congress due to gerrymandering, number one, which I'm sure you're studying about. And number two, the demographic shifting of Americans that are segregating themselves geographically. This is a really interesting phenomenon, that Americans are physically segregating themselves based on ideology. And it has made bipartisanship much more difficult because legislators will typically only represent large groups that are either blue or red. So it's been a challenge for us. We've had successes, as you've indicated, and I'll look for more in the future.
And now we have 4 questions around climate change and renewable energy policies, each dealing with a unique aspect of the issue. The next one is from Sukhman.
Hi, my name is Sukhman. I'm a senior at Cascade High School in Everett. You've made significant progress in measures to combat climate change. Do you think other parts of the U.S. will follow suit, especially the more conservative areas? And if not, is there still a benefit to measures being taken right now when a huge portion of America continues to rely on fossil fuels and refuses to make changes?
Well, the answer is definitely yes. We do influence positively other states, and I've seen that in many occasions. I'll give you an example. In 2017 or 2018, Governor Jerry Brown of California and myself started an organization called the U.S. Climate Alliance. And this is an alliance where we wanted to invite other states to join us in taking these strong actions against climate change. When we started, we just had, I don't know, 5 or 6 states that were part of this alliance. We now have 25 states and territories. And we have now worked together, and the things we're doing in Washington have been embraced in quite a number of these other states following our lead. And we're doing things, I'll give you an example. I was in New York at the Climate Week a couple weeks ago, and we announced that the U.S. Climate Alliance, these states have agreed jointly to provide 20 million heat pumps for people. So you can use a heat pump which uses clean electricity instead of having to use methane toxic gas. And that's the kind of thing that we've really moved the needle on. So what I've found is that you can influence other states, both by kind of challenging them, but also helping them to show them what policies work. So our staff routinely, probably on a daily basis, provides advice to other states about how to embrace the things we've done that actually work. So this is very important. It's vital for success. It's not universal yet, right? There's a few states that haven't got the memo yet because they're dominated by people that still want to ignore this problem and want to just continue to use oil and gas for the next several centuries and cook the planet. But that doesn't stop us from doing what we believe is right. And it doesn't stop us from doing what we believe will grow our economy. Because what we're doing in the state of Washington, as you know, is we're growing our economy like crazy. Up in Everett, we have a company called Helion that is making, or will be making, fusion-based energy. Fusion, as you know, is the fusion of 2 hydrogen atoms that can produce perfectly clean electricity. It's a fantastic technology. We hope that it will succeed. But we're growing jobs here because of the things we're doing around climate. And when we can tell that story to other governors, I can say, look what we've done. We've grown our economy because of the work that we've done. So we are leading, and I'll look forward to when you lead a clean energy company in Everett.
You mentioned oil and gas, Governor. Our next question is about EVs. Caitlin, take it away.
Hi, Governor Inslee. My name is Caitlin Henches, and I'm a senior at Lake Washington High School in Kirkland. As you've been mandating our state towards an all-electric state, when we go to electrical vehicles only, what is the farming community of over 40,000 farms going to do to plug in a combine in a field of 10,000 plus acres?
Well, it's a really good question. You know, the electrification of our industries is a step-by-step process, and it started first with passenger cars because they're easiest, right? It's easier to power a passenger car than a giant combine or a giant truck or a ship or an airplane. So we have started with the low-hanging fruit, which is a single occupancy cars. That's working really, really well. 18% of all the new sales of cars this year in the state of Washington are electric. So it's really working well. We're building more charging stations. But now we need to work up the ladder, if you will, to the more difficult technologies. Fortunately, what we're finding is increasing ability to do that in larger enterprises. Yesterday, I was at a company called First Mode in Seattle, and they make a fuel cell engine that runs on hydrogen, has zero pollution, and a fuel cell, as you know, takes hydrogen and it uses a catalyst and a membrane to create an electrical current. And they're running the largest truck in the world now on a fuel cell made in Seattle, Washington. It's like 40 feet tall in a big mine that mines platinum in South Africa. You can use that same type of technology on long haul trucking. You can use it for combines ultimately, or you can use batteries as opposed to hydrogen. And the battery technology is increasing dramatically to be able to have greater range and the like. So what I think we're seeing now is a rapid revolution of these technologies that will allow us to decarbonize these larger systems. The company I told you about, First Mode, they have plans to run locomotives using fuel cell technology. That's how powerful this can be. So for larger uses such as oceanic ships, we think that the use of hydrogen and ammonia as a transport fuel is very possible. I was at a shipbuilding company in, was it Norway or Finland the other day? When they do orders now for new ships, they basically are saying, make it ammonia ready. So we can use ammonia someday instead of bunker fuel to power these ships. So these technologies are coming online. I'm confident we're going to be able to do it. We're even doing aviation fuel. So there's a company in Moses Lake going to be making aviation fuel out of carbon dioxide and water, if you can imagine that. And a whole bunch of planes using biofuels. There are short haul planes also being used for using batteries. We flew the first battery powered plane and the first hydrogen fuel cell plane in world history from Moses Lake in the last 12 months. So important question. We're seeing great progress and we're looking forward to those combines running.
I think our students would like to explore more about hydrogen. So Gianna, are you ready for your question?
Hello, Governor. My name is Gianna Salter Argo, and I go to North Kitsap High School. I'm so glad you brought up hydrogen because that is what my question concerns. So back in May 2023, you signed in a House bill that basically has green electrolytic hydrogen that can be used as a transportation fuel. Obviously, this hydrogen has lots of benefits, and it is going to be incredibly rewarding in the future. My question is, how are you going to ensure that this hydrogen is safe for future generations?
Well, a couple of ways. One is to make sure that when we talk about hydrogen, we talk about green hydrogen. So when we use hydrogen, if we're going, which has great promise, when we use hydrogen to power our trucks, our combines, our ships, whatever we use it for, we got to make sure it's green hydrogen. That means hydrogen produced with clean power. Here's the reason I say that. If you use hydrogen, but it was produced from methane or oil, and you release carbon dioxide in that process, you really haven't had a large improvement from a climate change prospect. So the first thing we're going to do is, as we develop our hydrogen-based industrial sector, we're going to emphasize and make sure we use green hydrogen. That means hydrogen that's developed through electrolysis, where you run a current through it and you divide the hydrogen from the oxygen atoms. And that's the type of green hydrogen that we need to focus on. Unfortunately, we're going to be able to do that in part because we just won a $1 billion hydrogen hub award from the federal government. Thanks to President Biden's leadership, we now have this program that sets up hydrogen hubs, which basically is to build the infrastructure you need to provide hydrogen first to the transportation sector. And we just won this $1 billion that we're going to use. I talked yesterday to folks who are interested in establishing one of these hydrogen hubs in the Chehalis area. There used to be an old coal mine there. It's being shut down. And this company I referenced the other day, First Mode, is now turning this into a test track for their hydrogen-powered trucks that I just talked about. So it's kind of one of the first steps in building a hydrogen system that can really build a clean transportation hydrogen-based system in the state of Washington. And I couldn't be more pleased to have $1 billion of federal money to be able to do this great work. Now, to do this, we need some brilliant minds on helping to build these companies. And I hope people on this call are giving some thought to their careers on what you do to maybe work in these fields. We need mechanical engineers, we need chemical engineers, we need public policy people, we need business people. And I hope that you are giving some thought to this. The growth of these clean energy companies is going to rival anything possibly you could do in your next 50-year, 60-year careers. And I hope you give some thought to that. You'll love it. It's exciting. There's a lot of growth opportunities. You go to work for a company with 5 people, and 10 years later, you got a 500-person company, and you're the CEO. And I hope some of you give some thought to that.
I believe Anson has our next question.
Good afternoon, Governor. My name is Anson Wang, and I'm an 8th grader at Open Window School in Bellevue, Washington. The recently signed House Bill 1216 requires that the Department of Ecology creates and conducts environmental assessments of utility-scale renewable energy with various groups around Washington. Why did you feel it was important to engage directly with impacted communities before moving forward with developing clean energy in rural areas, instead of approaching communities with a finalized plan that included all the potential impacts and how to mitigate them? Thank you.
Well, I guess the answer is you want to know what the ramifications are of what you're doing. And we've had disadvantaged communities all too often to be kind of abused and neglected in decision making. And so we want to make sure that we look at those ramifications. I am very proud of our laws on climate change, because I think it's fair to say that we have the best in the country to try to bring justice to these systems. For instance, in our cap and invest bill, we require 35% of all the investment to go to disproportionately impacted communities, and an additional 10% to go to tribal communities. We also have a thing called the HEAL Act, which embraces environmental justice through everything we do through multiple agencies, from natural resources to transportation to our health community. So we have really emphasized this as a part of our climate change effort to simultaneously save the planet and bring more justice to our communities. And we're very proud of that. It's one of the reasons Washington State's the best state in the country. You can tell all the governors I said that too.
Thank you so much.
All right, the last student joining us is Sophia.
Good afternoon, Governor Inslee. My name is Sophia Del Villar, and I am a 9th grader at the downtown school in Seattle. During your time as governor, you've been a strong advocate for reversing the effects of climate change, and you've signed various bills into law for it. Now that you're not running for re-election, how do you intend to continue the momentum that was built by your administration towards addressing climate change? And touching on what you've already addressed on your previous answers, what other measures have you taken or will you take as you transition out of political life to ensure that the initiatives you've started are followed by the state in the years to come? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first off, we're not done yet in our climate work. I still have 1.25 years left as governor. So we have more work to do in the upcoming legislative session. There are a couple bills that are very important. One of the bills we need to get passed, which will allow utilities to transition out of methane natural gas and into electricity. And that's a very important bill that we need to get through. So I'm working on those. Just had a meeting 2 hours ago about that subject. We need to get to make sure that that gets through. So there's additional legislation I want to get passed before I leave this position, and they are critical to our efforts. After I leave office, I'm going to look for opportunities to play for the Seattle Sonics when we get the Seattle Sonics back for our NBA team. So that'll be my first priority. My second priorities will be working on clean energy in some capacity. So I intend, after I'm governor, I could potentially work for some nonprofits, for instance, to help other states learn from our experience. I could help private businesses look at opportunities and how to maximize their climate change goals. And that's as far as I've gotten as far as thinking about my future. but I'm really focused on the legislative session right now to get those last pieces in play. Now, another thing I need to do is we need to preserve and protect the things we've done already. So there are people who want to repeal our climate change efforts. They want to have more pollution. I think those people are nuts, but they're trying to repeal our Climate Commitment Act, for instance. And if they do that, it would simply mean more pollution that people would have to breathe in the state of Washington. And we cannot allow that. So I will be fighting the oil and gas industry that wants to pollute as much as they can in order to restrain their pollution with the Cap and Invest bill. And you might be involved in that yourself, in that discussion by our state. So first, we've got to protect the progress we've made. We got some more work to do with this utility bill I want to get through, and then we need to get the Seattle Sonics back so I can play.
All right, thank you so much, Governor. With your closing thoughts, what are you looking forward to when you leave office? You mentioned the Sonics, but I think you left out the fact that you are a very gifted illustrator. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, you're stretching your credibility. I'm not gifted at all. I do doodle sometimes. I like to give people happy birthday cards that I doodle. So that's as far as I get. I enjoy art. My brother is a retired art teacher. My brother-in-law is a retired art teacher. My mother was a painter, and I very much enjoy art, but I wish I had talent. Although everybody can enjoy it, so I guess that's a talent in itself. But as far as my plans, I will remain very active in the most important issue to the generation that's on this call. And that's to protect them from the ravages of climate change. There is no more important issue in the history of humanity than this one, because our continued existence, literally in large parts of the globe, is dependent on our ability to save ourselves from climate change. And I will be involved in that effort probably as long as I'm taking breath. And I will find a way to advocate those positions as I did when I ran for president. I'm glad Joe Biden has adopted many of the things that I've proposed, and he's done a crackerjack job, but there's a lot more work to do. So I'll be active. And then I look forward to meeting everybody on this call someday.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again for joining us today, Governor, and thank you, students, for all your great questions. That does it for this episode of Connects, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, and please thank your parents and follow their advice. They're always right. Good luck.
Thank you.